Good day, beautiful people. Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chasmith. Today, my question to you is, what is something that you are proud of this week that you can celebrate yourself for? It is so important to celebrate all the wins, even the small ones, and especially to acknowledge ourselves through this journey called life. Often we can do and go and be so wrapped up in this never enough, not good enough mindset. And we can forget to just stop and celebrate ourselves. We're quick to harshly judge and less likely to actually compliment ourselves. But we all do great things worthy of feeling pride and worthy of celebrating. So today, stop and acknowledge yourself. Give yourself a compliment and don't just say it and then quickly brush it off. Say it and feel it. Take in the good of it and let it linger for 10, 20, hell, even 60 seconds. And feel what it feels like to be proud of you. And if you want to take this one step further, share it. Call a friend or a family member and tell them what you're proud of so that they can celebrate you too. Do this every day this week, at least one time per day, and see how it feels. That's my challenge to you. So today is another wonderful interview testimonial episode. I do think it's a wonderful, awesome story that will really show us just how powerful our brains really are. And if you're someone who suffers from chronic pain or illness in your body and you're still just not convinced that there could be a mind-body relationship to it, I think this will be the perfect episode for you. Additionally, if there's anyone listening who has found themselves in a pattern of narcissistic relationship abuse, this will also be a good episode for you. And as always, there's something for everyone. I do think that I'm still learning how to be a little bit more proficient with sound quality, and there's a couple little mishaps in this episode. I do apologize, but bear with me. I'm a work in progress, just like everyone else, and I'm doing this all on my own and learning as I go. So thank you so much in advance for your patience and acceptance and, willingness to understand. If you've been following along and you're finding the message that has been shared by these wonderful guests as inspiring or helpful, please consider rating and reviewing my podcast as well as clicking subscribe so that every week the newest episode shows up in your library. These are just a few simple, quick steps that can help me spread this message, and it truly means the world to me because I think most of us know that it takes a tribe. My interview today is with a woman, Adriana Bucci. She is the founder of Let's Get Your Shift Together and the host of a podcast, The Shift Show. And can I just say, I am feeling blessed. Yes, I can. There are so many amazing people in this healing community. And perhaps it's the impact that our quest towards physical healing leaves on our hearts and minds. And it just helps create amazing people. I don't know. But today we actually dive into this very topic in my discussion with Adriana. So Adriana's from Canada. She's beautiful, fun. She has a lot of zest for life and a willingness to share her story, which is quite impressive. And she's really good at laughing, which is such an important part of healing and wellness. So yeah, I felt like her laughter was extremely contagious, and I love just hearing her be able to share her story that was obviously not an easy story to get through, but she's able to do it now in a way that supports her well-being, and she's able to laugh about these things, which I think is really impressive. Adriana offers some wonderful words of wisdom and insight for anyone out there in the middle of it all. And she has gotten to a place in her life where she sees the blessing in the pain itself, as it has led her to pursue her own coaching business, write a book, and launch her podcast. Links are all going to be in the show notes. Once again, the lingo you will hear today will be possibly new if this is all new for you. And the most common term that we're going to be talking about is TMS, which stands for tension myositis or myoneural syndrome. And this basically is a mind-body syndrome where pain and illness show up in the body as a result of our nervous system in a chronic state of fight or flight from repressed emotions. It will be explained a little bit more throughout the episode, but I will add some links in the show notes as usual for you to do some additional research if you desire. With all that said, let's go ahead and welcome Adriana to the show. All right, welcome Adriana. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited actually to get to chat with you and allow the listeners a chance to hear your story.
Yay.
Awesome. So from the top, actually, would you be open to sharing, just starting from the basics, sharing your story around your chronic pain experience, pre-recovery, and then what led you to Dr. Sarno?
Sure. So, I had symptoms like all throughout my childhood. Like I'm sure my TMS story started in the womb pretty much, but we'll start with 2015. So in 2015, I got a wisdom tooth extraction and, just regular routine procedure. It was, a little traumatic because I was awake and I never had a cavity in my life. And then all of a sudden, like I'm awake, they're pulling teeth out of my mouth and that's really messed up. And then the dentist didn't believe me when I told him that I could feel some pain with one particular tooth he was pulling out. And that ended up being the side of my jaw that was supposedly injured. So that was just a horrible experience altogether. And then sure enough, like my jaw was just in a ton of pain and I kept going back to the dentist like multiple times. They were not taking me seriously at all with how much pain I was in. And like my face just like, it really felt like it was going to explode. So I end up going to an emergency dentist like 3 weeks after this procedure, after 3 weeks of trying to get my dentist to take me seriously. And sure enough, they told me I had an infection and dry sockets. So that's like when the blood clot comes out when you get dry sockets. And you don't want that to happen because that exposes like the bone of your jaw to like the outside world. And it's disgusting and horrifying and whatever. So I thought that was my injury. I eventually switched dentists, of course. And that dentist ended up confirming to me that I had TMJ dysfunction. And my jaw would like open on a deviation. So that what that means is like when you open and close your mouth, like for a normal jaw, it's like a straight line, but it would go in a zigzag pattern for me. So I'm convinced that like my face is broken at this point. Yeah. I did physiotherapy. I did chiropractor, like so many things. It was, like my life was literally go to work and then go to one of your appointments after work and then go
your
home.
Second full-time job.
Exactly. It was it was literally like my full-time job after my full-time job. And, I tried everything for my jaw. I tried like the soft diet. I tried Botox for migraines because like my jaw was like, that's when I first got introduced to regularly scheduled migraines. It was such a disaster. And just my face was hurting all the time. And like one of the treatments for migraines is Botox. So I did the medical Botox. It paralyzed my face. And I still had some pain though, but it was like a decent reduction in the pain.
Is that the goal of the Botox?
Yeah, like it weakens your muscles. So they put it in your masseter muscles, which is like the muscles you use to chew. So it's kind of challenging to like eat something really chewy. Not that I had an issue with that anyways, because I was like used to the soft diet at that point. But basically the idea is that by injecting those muscles, you stop using those muscles and then you don't have pain.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm learning something new.
Awesome. So yeah, it just kind of like paralyzes everything. But then it's like you're using other muscles because you have to talk and live and, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, like all that. And then eventually things got worse over the next 4 years, basically. So I would end up with carpal tunnel syndrome. Yeah. And neck pain and shoulder pain and upper back pain. And tendonitis and tennis elbow, and I don't play tennis. So yeah, like just all these issues with my upper body. And I went to a specialist who specializes in TMJ dysfunction, and he had me convinced that all of the other problems with my body, like the neck pain, the shoulder pain, the carpal tunnel syndrome, was related to my jaw. So just this one little injury on my jaw just affected like almost half of my body.
And this jaw injury is a result of the surgery.
Yeah,
Quote,
of
unquote,
the wisdom tooth extraction. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But then, so that actually changed apparently. So it got really confusing for me. So with this specialist, this TMJ specialist guy, he got me to do like this weird cone x-ray. I think that's what it's called, but it takes measurements. It's a very fancy x-ray. I had to go like somewhere downtown, like to get this x-ray done. It was, an intense experience. And it measures like the length of your bones. So pretty much this x-ray confirmed that my lower jaw was too big for my upper jaw. And so I literally asked him, I'm like, so how did this happen from getting my wisdom teeth taken out? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why was that the reason I have pain, but I didn't have jaw pain before this, if my lower jaw was already too big, apparently.
Right.
And he kind of like chalked it up to, that wisdom tooth extraction was like the trigger for me to have these issues. And I would eventually have these issues at some point. And for some people, it's a car accident. For some people, it's, a tooth extraction, or, they fall or something. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like, this doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So I proceeded with like the beginning stages of his treatment, which would have been 2 years of splint therapy and braces. So here I am approaching 30, getting braces for the second time in my life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was terrible. So it was like, I already had perfect teeth. And then, I had to do this splint therapy, which like it widened my upper jaw a little bit. So I have gaps in my teeth still, because I quit the treatment after I found out about TMS. But it was horrible. And yeah, like I ended up getting surgery on my left hand for carpal tunnel syndrome, and that helped me with my grip, but I still had pain and some numbness here and there. So I really went through the ringer. It was a shit show. It was an absolute disaster. And eventually, so this is where like things really go downhill. So if you can imagine at this point, I'm sleeping on special pillows, on like mountains of special pillows in my bed. I'm managing my positioning, my posture. My equipment at work had to be all ergonomic. And all of a sudden, so I had the braces on. It's October 2018. They changed my first wire because when they first put the braces on, I had vertigo for several weeks. And apparently that was because of my jaw as well. Now I know it's all TMS, but so it's October. They changed the first wire. I felt my jaw move forward. So I'm super excited because that's what it was supposed to do, to like get in the right position or whatever. And this was on a Thursday. So on the Friday, I'm out with a friend, and all of a sudden I get this random shooting pain in my head. So I'm thinking, okay, this is a migraine, but this is okay because my jaw just moved and all my muscles are spasming, and this is why I have a migraine. So that's okay. But it got so, like, I used to be able to manage migraines, like the first couple of hours I'd be okay, but like I actually had to cancel this dinner. Like I had to leave early because I was just in excruciating pain. Turns out this was more than just a migraine. It ended up being shingles in my mouth.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yep. At the ripe old age of 30. So, for anyone who doesn't know what shingles is, it's the chickenpox virus reactivated. And that happens when people are senior citizens.
Or highly stressed.
Yeah, or highly stressed. Exactly. Exactly. And I was highly stressed. And it was actually the second time in my life getting shingles. So I had gotten it when I was 23 on my lower back. And I thought that was painful. But when it's in your mouth, it's like a completely different ballgame. So it's like extreme nerve pain. And like the best way I can describe the pain of shingles is someone's pouring acid on your skin and lighting it on fire while you're simultaneously being hit by lightning at the same time.
That's a really good description.
Yeah.
It sounds terrible, but it's really good. And
That's literally what it feels like. You've had it before too?
I did in my 30s.
No. Oh my God.
Yeah. Coincidentally, after a very stressful situation.
Oh my God.
And the doctor said the same thing. She's like, so what is going on in your life? Because this is normally seniors or a very high stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry you had shingles too.
Well, I'm sorry you had them in your mouth.
It was really bad in my mouth. Oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah. So like this was when like I thought things had already spiraled downhill. No, they just got worse at this point. So yeah, like I couldn't brush my teeth because it was just so painful. Yeah. And I thought it was like the stuff in my mouth, like the braces and like the splint on the roof of my mouth. Because, you know, it was super painful. And then I looked in my mouth with like, I had like this equipment for my teeth because I was just like obsessed with my teeth and making sure my jaw was okay. So I had like this mirror that had like a little flashlight on it that you can like put in your mouth and like look in, like they do in the dentist office because I was cool. And I see these little cuts on the roof of my mouth and I'm like, what the hell? Like, is that the splint doing this? Like, is that why I'm in so much pain? So I sent a picture to my orthodontist and he's like, okay, it was like Monday morning. He's like, okay, come in like right now because I don't know what I'm looking at and that doesn't look normal. So I go. And yeah, he basically confirmed that it's probably shingles. You need to go to your family doctor, get on the antivirals right away, and good luck to you. It's not, it's not the treatment that we're doing. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Go to my doctor. It's shingles, and it was bad. So like, I spent 5 weeks not eating.
Wow.
Yeah, and I couldn't really take any painkillers at this point because I had ulcers from taking painkillers. Yeah. So
it's like one thing after the next.
I know, right? Like it was just there. I could not catch a break. And I was getting nerve block injections like twice a week actually at this point. Cause like it wore off really fast. I was doing the Botox again and it was, you know, nothing was really touching the pain. Like I'd get like a little bit of relief and then I'd be in excruciating pain again. So fast forward to January and I'm losing my mind at this point, like completely losing it. And I was at the point where I was 30 and I'm like, I'm 30 going on 90. Like, what's my future going to be if it's already this bad, if I'm already in this much pain at 30 and people my age are like enjoying their lives. They're, you know, doing things. They're going on adventures. They're, you know, doing all these things that like people my age do. And here I am like just ready to quit. Like, what do I do here? Like, how am I supposed to go on in my life? Like, and the only thing I was thinking of is like, okay, like if I kill myself now, my husband's going to be really sad. So maybe I'll just give him another 10 years. And then we'll see what happens when I turn 40.
Well, I'm glad you had a husband to rationalize that.
Right? Like, you know, like my mind really went there. And from the shingles, I ended up with trigeminal neuralgia, which it's a nerve in your face. And that's basically the nerve that got affected by the shingles and the rash happened in my mouth. And it's the nerve that's responsible for all the feeling in your face. Wow. And yeah. And that trigeminal neuralgia is nicknamed the suicide disease because of how freaking painful it is. So, you know, like it really makes sense that my mind went there because of how much pain I was in. So I'm scrolling, I'm just randomly scrolling on Facebook one day and, you know, like in despair, just like trying to distract myself from the pain. And I see this ad for an app called Curable. And it's advertised to help people with chronic pain. And then I'm seeing something about like, oh, it's like having Dr. John Sarno in your pocket. And I'm just like, I don't understand what that means or who that is. But I'm so freaking desperate for pain relief that let's just sign up for a 1-year subscription and see what happens. So I thought it was gonna like hypnotize me into thinking I wasn't in pain anymore or something like that. Like I really did no research into it. I just took a very desperate leap of faith and bought this subscription. So I'm like looking into it and it's saying how you cure your pain by expressing repressed emotions from childhood trauma. And I'm like, no, my pain's real. Like, this isn't true. Like, this sounds like BS. Like, no way.
You're like, no, it was a surgery. It's the surgery did it all.
Exactly. The surgery from 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the deviation in my jaw. And like, I even had an MRI done on my jaw too, where it showed that the right side of my jaw was compressing on my ear canal. And I used to get a lot of ear infections, and I thought that was because of my jaw as well. But, it turns out it's TMS.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm very much in this thought process of like, no, like this is a structural problem and it's because of an injury, and that triggered the structural problem to be a problem. Like this is bullshit. This doesn't make any sense. So I just decided to be pissed off for the rest of the night and not look at the app anymore.
Makes sense. We all get a little defensive at first,
Exactly. Oh, I was so in like defensive mode at that point.
Yeah, we have to defend. We have to defend the pain.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, the next day comes along, as it does, and I'm still angry that I wasted like, I don't know, what was it, $100 on the year subscription or something like that. And I'm still also in pain. And the pain was kind of worse that day too. So that's when I kind of decided, okay, you know what? I don't believe this is going to work for me. This sounds like complete crap, but I'm desperate. I don't really have that many more options left for pain relief. And I was literally considering doing like a surgery to sever the nerve from my brain for my face. Yeah, like it's literal brain surgery. But I guess luckily the Canadian healthcare system is so freaking slow that it was like a 16 to 18 month wait to see that specialist. So, by the time like my doctor put in the referral for it, but I had to wait like minimum 16 months. So this was like 5 weeks later. Yeah.
It sounds like the universe had your back.
Yeah, it did. I know, right? Like the biggest complaint about like healthcare in Canada is how long it takes. And it's like, I'm so glad that it takes that long.
Yes.
Because like, like I was willing to like travel somewhere for like some kind of experimental surgery. Like I didn't care at this point. Like I was just like, it's either this pain goes away or I don't live anymore. Like this is too much. So yeah, I figured let's try it out. Like humor me app. Like let's see what you got. And I don't think I have any childhood trauma. And I don't think I have any emotions. Of course I didn't. They were all repressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's see what happens. So the first week went along, and I was doing the work. Like it has multiple different types of exercises, right? And so they have like meditations, education, writing exercises, stuff like that. And so I did like, a variety of these exercises at the beginning. And the first week I actually noticed a 10% reduction in my pain.
Wow. So is that for the listeners that are being piqued interest with this app, is it, because I actually haven't looked into it. Is it like a protocol, or is it more like, hey, there's all these different things and you can pick and choose what you want to do?
So it's actually really cool. It's so it's called Curable, like literally the way you hear it, curable, like this pain is curable. It's like an interactive technology type thing. So when you go into it, you enter your information or whatever, and then you try out like, I think the first exercise is like universal for everybody. And then you rank how it like helped you. And then the algorithm in it like chooses the next exercise for you based on your feedback. Yeah. And it kind of takes it from there. Yeah. So like when there's exercises that like don't work for you, it gives you less of those. And when there's ones that do work for you, it'll give you more of those. So it's actually really cool. It's like really cool technology.
That's awesome. So lots of meditations, journaling prompts, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, like writing letters to the people who hurt you in your past and like digging into your childhood. It was a lot. And I wasn't expecting it to be that heavy of work.
Right.
So of course I ended up re-traumatizing myself because it was working so well. By the second week, I had like my first 5 minutes of no pain. And I was like, oh my God, is this how normal people feel?
Wow.
Yeah. So that kind of, like you don't really have anybody guiding you as you do the program. Like there's a Facebook group and you can go in there for advice from other people doing the program or the app or whatever you want to call it. But there's no one really guiding you step by step. Mm-hmm. So I just deep dove into it and did way more exercises per week than recommended.
Sounds about right.
Right?
Given the traditional personality traits that
exactly
end up with TMS.
Exactly, right? Like the overachiever in me was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I totally re-traumatized myself, got myself on some antidepressants for a couple of months, restarted therapy and all that. And then that kind of, I eventually recovered from being re-traumatized. So everything was all good. And by April of 2019, so I started this in January of 19. By April, I was 100% pain-free.
Wow. That's such a fast healing experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I never like to put a time frame on it because, there's experiences where people do a Joe Dispenza meditation and heal instantaneously. Yeah. But there's also people who it might take 2 years of digging through stuff. And I would still say, I think anything's possible, but that is fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And it's funny because I was like stuck at that 80% plateau for like most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you got to 80% pretty quick and then it was just.
Yeah. Like by February, I got to 60%. And that's when I decided like, let's take all this stuff out of my mouth. So I still had the braces and the splint. And I literally went to that orthodontist and I was like, take this shit out. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah.
So you really, you went from super defensive, this is not it, to all in. Like,
exactly.
You were all in.
Oh, yeah.
You believed it.
Totally. As soon as I had that first 5 minutes of pain-free, I was like, okay, this is real. This is reality. Emotions are a thing.
Isn't that amazing when you're excited about 5 minutes of pain-free?
Right? Right?
Wow.
It was glorious.
Is there anything specific in that 4 months that you attribute to your healing so rapidly? I know you said you were like an overachiever with it and you went all in, but was there any specific tools that really worked for you the most or resonated, or do you feel it was just the combination of everything?
I think honestly, like a combination of everything, but I think like my top 3, if I had to name them, would be like, okay, the writing, like when you write stuff down, like, and I'm not saying on a desktop, like when you're typing, when you literally take a pen to paper and you start writing and getting those thoughts out, like magic happens. So the written exercises on the app, and like I was doing, the journaling as well, like Nicole's journal speak and all that kind of stuff too. And like that in itself, like I hate writing. I absolutely hate writing. Like for me to make a list, like a grocery list or something, to have to write it down, like no.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I'm very much one of those people who's like averse to writing. So like just the fact that I did it and it helped so much, I think that just meant that I needed that the most. So writing 100%, super helpful. The second thing that was really helpful for me was like just, having that tiny reduction in my pain, like that little glimmer of hope, that 5 minutes of pain-free. Yeah. That in itself, like just at the very beginning of doing the work, was what turned me into a believer, I guess.
Belief. Yeah. It's that belief, that faith. Yeah. And you really were all in.
Oh yeah. I totally invested myself into it after that. And then
did you have any moments of doubt come back, or any moments of fear where that voice in your head's like, what are you doing? You're going to hurt yourself worse. This is, did you have it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And what'd you do? What'd you say to it? How'd you respond to it?
So basically it actually ties in with the third thing that was helpful for me, was not catastrophizing the pain. So it's like, I gave pain such a big meaning for me that like, this is going to ruin my life. I'm going to die. This is horrible. This is the next 10 years of my life are going to be even worse. So every time I had a flare up, which, they happen, they absolutely do happen. I kind of like treated the pain like it was just an annoying 2-year-old child. Where it's like, I just had this attitude with it of like, okay, you have a lot to say right now. Say whatever you need to say. And, you know, hopefully you'll be done your tantrum soon. And I know that this isn't permanent. So just knowing that like I got through the pain once and I managed to get to a point of 100% pain free, like why can't I do it again?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that's so interesting. I know in my experience is when you start seeing those shifts and then you're good. And then all of a sudden it comes back. You're like, no, you're not making sense anymore. If it was structural, it would hurt all the time.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Yeah. And like my first flare up was shoulder pain.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like, I always had like a degree of shoulder pain. But like, this time it was like like more intense than my jaw pain or like my trigeminal neuralgia or anything like that. So it was like, all right, this is totally the symptom imperative. It's showing up in my shoulder for whatever reason. And there's nothing wrong with my shoulder, and just continuing to remind myself of that, continuing to journal. I still journal to this day. And, yeah, like just not losing hope and that momentum that, you know, TMS is a real thing. Like the mind-body connection is the realest thing of all time.
Absolutely. Mind-body. So you still journal to this day. What do you, what is your journaling like? Is it more like journal speak where you're just unleashing the emotion, or is it more just like what's going on in your day-to-day life, checking in with yourself today and how you're feeling about things?
So it really depends on the day. I don't do it every single day, but like most days I do. And I guess it's like a combination of journal speak and just rage journaling. So like I don't have, you know, the Sarno's 3 lists, right? Like the childhood stress, adult stress, and personality traits. I don't have that list anymore because I got through all of those topics. So now it's just literally, I just have an old-fashioned temper tantrum on paper whenever I feel like I need to. And then, you know, like I still make discoveries about myself and my journey to this day. And it's something that I don't think will ever be something that I don't do.
Sure. It's a lifelong journey.
Totally.
I mean, we're here to grow and evolve, and there's always work to do.
Absolutely. Like the healing journey never ends.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this has been your experience, but for me, I learned so quickly in mine that what started as a physical healing journey there was so much light around the fact that this was not a physical, it wasn't even about a physical healing journey. It's about a mental, an emotional, and a soul journey.
Exactly.
And that doesn't end.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. So I had a couple questions just because I really want the listeners to have an opportunity to hear some of these answers, and in case they're there and they want to connect or feel that resonance with you. Very early on, you mentioned that you're going to start at 2015, but that you had said now in hindsight, this probably really started from the womb. And I was just curious, knowing what you know today, what has led you to kind of connect those dots and realize that you probably had some symptoms of TMS from early on?
Oh, totally. Just like my upbringing in general, like I was raised by a narcissistic mother. And so, you know, like she had her own trauma and she made the choice to be who she was. And that's pretty much what I guess emotionally damaged me from a young age, because I couldn't express my emotions as a kid. And I do remember as a kid, there were times where I'd have like intense stomach pain and like severe anxiety, but like, you know, it was just chalked up as like nothing, or like maybe she has some kind of food intolerance or whatever.
Write it off.
Exactly. You totally write it off. And then like when your parent is like, yeah, no, you're fine, you believe that, oh, okay, this is just how painful life is supposed to be. All right.
Yeah. Well, we do this so much. I see this across the board with so many people. We write off so many things and we call them normal. But what I've come to learn is that common is not normal. So things might be common, but that doesn't mean they're normal. So people who have like allergies to this and allergies to that, and I always just have a runny nose, it's my normal, but it's not normal. And we can actually free ourselves from these things.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you was, so we kind of understand that there was this surgery was a catalyst for this kind of downward spiral where all the TMS really started showing itself strongly. Was there anything emotional that happened to you at that time that you think was the actual underlying catalyst? Or do you think, or have you thought more that it was the emotional trauma from that pain experienced during surgery and not being heard and understood or believed? Do you think that could have been the catalyst, or do you just not know?
Honestly, I think it's probably a combination of the two. Because it's funny, because in 2014, that was when I actually figured out that my mother was a narcissist. But I decided to ignore that truth for 2 years. Yeah. So it wasn't until 2016 that I actually decided to believe it, if that makes sense. Because it's a bit of a disturbing thing to come to terms with, that it's like, okay,
Absolutely.
the person, like the one person you were supposed to trust did not actually have your back. So yeah, it's just interesting that the catalyst happened in 2015. I do remember having like tennis elbow in 2014 as well. And it was actually after I had a breakup with a narcissistic boyfriend, which was kind of what got me down that rabbit hole to figuring out my mom was a narcissist and all that. So it is funny that I did have some level of body pain at that time. But I just chalked it up to, I work in an office and I'm typing all day and my arms are bent.
Right.
Right. Didn't even think about the stress because, I was so good at repressing my emotions that, when I found out that the guy I had been dating was a narcissist and, through that rabbit hole, realized I had a pattern of attracting narcissists in my life. And then figuring out that my mother was a narcissist, I think I cried for like 10 minutes. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to let these people bother me. And I just kept, So I just kept like,
typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the brain's like, hey, let me give you a little bit of pain, but it gets louder,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's brilliant. So it's like, oh, surgery, this is a great place to hide it.
Exactly. I think that was the perfect opportunity for my brain to be like, okay, we're at capacity for emotions.
Yeah.
This surgery, like something's broken in her jaw. And like, they say that the brain knows exactly what's going on in the body. So the brain knew that my lower jaw was too big, supposedly, for my upper jaw. And then that, of course, got confirmed in x-rays and MRIs and all that kind of stuff. And, for people with back pain, they have herniations, and because the brain knows that. So it creates that back pain because the person's going to believe it. So you don't think about your emotions and you're focused on your body and what's wrong with your body. So that was the perfect catalyst for me to, go down that downward spiral.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our brains are so brilliant and so frustrating sometimes.
So wild.
So I guess I wanted to ask, what, if you had any, it seems like you've already shared some, like the struggles and a lot of light bulb moments, but what, in the end, through all of this, what would you say is the gift in the pain?
Oh my gosh. Like just the pain was my biggest gift, because without the pain, I would have never done the work and felt better, because as soon as I felt better, that's when I decided I must help people. Like I have to help people. So then I created my company, Let's Get Your Shift Together. And initially I was only going to work with people with TMS because I was not comfortable sharing my story about my mom and all that kind of stuff. Like I didn't want my information to be on the internet, like all those fears.
Yes. I know. Yes.
Yeah. So initially, like that was what I was going to do. But then, I figured, it's way too easy to help people with their pain, because like I can help anybody with their pain and with the steps that they need to take on healing from the pain. But what about like other people who have had similar childhoods as me? Like chances are, they might not even know about TMS. They might not even know about the mind-body connection. So why don't I talk to people who are adult children of narcissistic parents and I'm sure that the majority of them probably have some sort of body pain in their body because of the narcissistic abuse. And of course they're repressing emotions. So of course they're going to have that pain. And sure enough, like most of my clients have pain.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it just wasn't so loud yet that was their primary focus.
Exactly. It's more like, how do you get over a narcissist and all that kind of stuff? And it's like, okay, wait a minute. Like, look at how the fact that you've had to repress your emotions because of these people have affected you and yourself and your body and your mind. Let's work on that. And then people end up having bigger shifts than they would if I didn't take an emotional approach to healing from narcissistic abuse, because, it's like a 2-for-1 deal almost. Like, you heal from the abuse and you also heal from like the physical pain that you had no idea was even related to the abuse.
Right. Yeah. And, maybe you're catching them too before it does get louder.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, basically this company that you're doing now, that you're operating, that you're running, was built out of your experience of healing through this.
Yeah. The only reason it exists is because I had chronic pain. Literally. So like the pain is my biggest gift, because let's get your shift together came out of that.
On top of that, was there anything else, like the catalyst for you to have these more mental shifts and aha moments around your own growth in your mind and emotions?
Totally. Like, I think just realizing that like conditioning has played such a role in my life, like always making sure that I'm doing things right, or being the good girl, or putting other people's needs ahead of my own. And like, that was just such a huge shift that I made, because I just thought that was the truth. I thought like, some people who are difficult to deal with, they just have to have their needs catered to them. And I'm just one of those people who's capable of doing that because they can't do it for themselves. And that was like, because I was raised by that. So just realizing that, no, absolutely not. Like, everyone's in charge of their own journey, and anyone who, needs to rely on me for their happiness, like, no, like, gotta set boundaries with those people. So just doing this work has helped me to set those boundaries and not feel guilty about it and not feel like a horrible person about it. And I just want people listening to understand that, doing this work is a huge undertaking, but where you're going to be when you're on the other side of the pain is going to be so worth it. And you're going to thank yourself for actually getting started, and your relationships are going to be better. Like, you're going to have better relationships with people in general. Like, my relationship with my husband now is so much better than it was when we first got married, just because now I did the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And probably relationship with yourself.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You said a key word, boundaries. And I know in my experience, that's something that a lot of people who have chronic pain and illness, we're not very good at.
Exactly.
Until we do the work.
Yeah. And setting boundaries is like the scariest thing when you're not used to doing it. And when you are somebody with the classic TMS symptoms, it's like the worst thing ever. And you feel like you're going to die because you're going to upset that other person or whatever. But, when you actually process those emotions behind setting boundaries, it's like, oh yeah, no, I can do this, and screw that person. Like, I actually need to put myself first.
Yeah. And I notice when you do that all of a sudden the right people start kind of filling into your life. The people who you don't want there anyways, that don't support you, they kind of fall to the wayside.
Exactly.
Creating space.
Exactly. And it's not a huge loss. Like, if those people are not meant to be in your life, then good riddance. Like, and a lot of people will be threatened by your growth as well. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I definitely lost friends from this, but you know what? They're not my people, and that's okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's a vulnerable, scary part too. And like you said, at first, not even finding your resistance to even, have your business and your platform, the people you're serving around the narcissism, and not wanting to put your own story out there. That's a very real thing. I mean, that to be able to like expose that and have that internal fear of, oh, people are going to judge me, or people, even you can have your family or the people who were it. I know I had the fears of, oh, they're going to say, they're going to be defensive or undermine what I'm feeling or experiencing. And you have all that come up.
Oh yeah. Oh, I was
Yeah.
absolutely terrified. Like before, so my narcissistic mother ended up passing away last month, but before that happened,
Mm.
I had like my podcast out there. I had like all this information out there, and like on my website it says like, oh, after an up and down relationship with my mother, I was terrified she'd find it.
Mm.
Absolutely terrified. I even like my first episode of my podcast, like the fear was real.
Mm.
The first
Yeah.
episode, yeah, it's like the intro episode. I actually deleted it for a while. And then I put it back up because I realized, like, no, if she finds it, I don't actually care because I had to process those emotions. But now, like, the intro episode is the third episode because of that. And it's kind of funny in hindsight.
That is funny. And so did you ever end up having a relationship with her again, or no, you had to
No.
write that one off?
Oh, no,
Mhm.
that was completely written off.
Mhm.
It was a very toxic relationship. There was no way she could see my side of how, like, she had hurt me as a child, as an adult, whatever. So I had to set those extreme boundaries with her for my own mental health, like for my own sanity. And,
Mhm.
you know, like I had that fear of like, am I going to regret it when she dies? And that's a real fear that a lot of adult children of narcissists have because, you know, you're
Absolutely.
scared. Yeah. Like setting those boundaries is scary. And I can honestly say I have no regrets for putting myself first and for taking
Mhm.
care of my own mental health first. So
That's beautiful.
thank you.
I honor you for that. That's really beautiful. I
Thank
know
you.
I've been, I can relate very much to a lot of what you say. And I've had
Mm-hmm.
those same very real fears that if I don't do this, or if I do honor this boundary and I do this, will I regret it when they die?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
It's
know so many people go through that.
totally, totally. And that's something I've been like more openly talking about now because it's like, okay, like I've processed the emotions behind it. She's obviously not going to find me. And it's something a lot of people struggle with. Like the response I got from it was like unreal. Like there's so many people that like, you know, either signed up for coaching or sent me like profuse thank yous for actually having this conversation in like a public forum. So
Absolutely. Because it
yeah,
took courage for you, and you're holding space now.
absolutely.
Wow, that's a beautiful. So you have this podcast, you have this business. Would you like to
Mhm.
tell the listeners about, um, they kind of already know what you do, but maybe you could share with them how they could support you or how you could support them and where they can find you and what your podcast is.
Yeah, totally. So my podcast is The Shift Show with Adriana Bucci. I'll send you the link for it.
Thank you.
No worries. I usually have an episode every week, trying to be more consistent with it. And sometimes I do interviews with other people who have overcome TMS or, you know, narcissistic abuse experts and stuff like that. Sometimes it's just me rambling on about something to do with either TMS or narcissistic abuse. So it's like a nice little hybrid of the two. My website is letsgetyourshifttogether.com and all of my resources are on there. So I do, of course, offer one-on-one coaching with people, of course, who just want someone to hold space for them and to guide them step by step on doing the work rather than, you know, diving into it on their own. And some people even come to me after they've done the work for such a long time on their own. And, you know, maybe they've been doing it for a year and they still need that guidance. And then they make massive, massive shifts after working with me, just because, you know, I'm able to hold that space for them and guide them appropriately in a way that doesn't re-traumatize them. Because that's kind of what got me into this to begin with, the fact that I had re-traumatized myself. And
Yes.
yeah, I also have a course called Transform Your Pain, and it's basically step by step how to do the TMS work. And there's like 12 modules on it. There's PowerPoint presentations, me lecturing about it. It's an awesome, awesome course. And there's also a section at the end on how you can use that work to deal with narcissistic people and overcome narcissistic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a book as well, which it's the same idea as the course, but in a book form, of course. And yeah, my Instagram page is at Let's Get Your Shift Together. I do lives every now and again. I answer questions from viewers, stuff like that. And yeah, I'm all over the place.
I love it. I love your name too.
Thank you.
Yes. Shift has been a very big word in my life
Yes.
for the past few years. It shows up everywhere over and over again. And I know I've been in the middle of a big shift as well.
Amazing.
So it's beautiful. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll definitely get some links into the show notes
Sounds good.
for the listeners. And then the final question I have is just if you had any message to share with the listeners, any advice, any feedback, if somebody's, listening right now and they're in the middle of that cycle, that turmoil, that hopelessness, where, you found yourself a couple years ago, what message or advice do you have for anybody who's listening?
Totally. My message is that like the mind-body connection is 1,000% real. Like your brain is going to try and throw you curveballs to try and make you think that it's not real or that this isn't going to work for you and all that kind of stuff. And I just want you to know that that is just your brain trying to protect you, because your brain literally thinks that the emotions that you've been repressing all this time are actually dangerous to the point that they'll kill you. Like it's a life and death danger that your brain thinks these emotions are. It's all unconscious, so don't judge yourself for it. And one of the biggest things to incorporate on the healing journey is some form of self-compassion. So just understanding that, this is what you've been through in your life, and that doesn't have to define you at all. It's just part of your story. And doing the work doesn't mean that you're reliving the trauma. Like that's not it at all. And it just means that you're unlearning patterns and behaviors that led you to where you're at today. And don't underestimate the power of using baby steps to get to that final goal. And I know people hate hearing that because you don't want to do it slowly. You just want the pain to be gone now. But the more baby steps that you take, the more your brain is receptive to these changes and these shifts that you're going to make. And then you'll actually end up healing faster by taking smaller steps.
Yeah. I mean, well, you're not overstimulating it all at once.
Exactly.
That way. It's incremental.
Exactly.
And I know for me, that's like all great. I love that information and that feedback. And I know for me, something that I really noticed was when I kind of stopped making pain the priority, like healing the pain, when I started noticing the shift in my mind and stopped making the pain the priority, suddenly the pain didn't have the same purpose anymore.
Exactly.
And it just started falling away.
Exactly.
So...
Exactly.
Well, I just wanted to thank you again for being here with me and being a part of this new adventure I'm on, and sharing your gift and your story with the listeners in the world, so that they can be inspired to have their healing journey begin.
Of course, I'm happy to spread the word, and it's been an honor being on your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Enjoy your day.
You too.
All right, that's a wrap. Did you love her or what? She has the laughter down. It's quite impressive after hearing her story and all that she's been through, isn't it? So if this message resonates with you, please rate and review and help me get the word out that we are capable of healing, so we can all take our power back. And remember this week's goal. 1 time per day, take a moment out of your day to celebrate yourself. Think of something you are proud of, and then if you feel compelled, tell a friend so they can celebrate you too. I know it might feel weird at first, but it does get easier, I promise. And until next time, make this week great.